All right, we are on air. Happy Thursday, December 8th, everybody. Let's see. So since last week, I mentioned that I was trying to renew our PHP Storm licenses. Those have been renewed, and I think the way that works is that she took all of the ones that we hadn't handed out yet and converted them into a different kind of license. So now it covers more than just PHP Storm. There's some other products that you can get with it. So I would say anyone who currently has a license probably isn't going to have access to that, but we have a handful more to hand out. So if you need a PHP Storm license and you want to try all of the cool new stuff that they're giving away, let me know. Send an email to info@backdropcms.org. The new ones should be good for a year from now. So that's it. I don't know if anyone else has any other updates PMC-wise. We haven't been doing much lately, but moving on. Infrastructure tasks. We are working on backdropcms.org. We need to figure out how to get better content in the showcase. We also need to figure out how to theme the showcase landing page so that it looks like the designs that we have. And we could use help on either of those. The new documentation section is live. There's now a link in the main sidebar on backdropcms.org called user guide, for the lack of a better idea of what to call it. And that will move as soon as we get our new homepage redesign done into the top level, or I guess into the second level. So we'll have like 4 links across the top, and one of them will be support, and then documentation will be in the support section. Wes is working on a redesign and re-theme of backdropcms.org. The theme is mostly the same, with the exception that we aren't going to have a left sidebar anymore. So a couple of our layouts that have the drawer are being replaced with the new probably core layouts that we're using that use those. I hope that'll make some of our theming a little less crazy. So the retheme isn't going to actually be a rebrand in any way other than the homepage being significantly improved. So we're hoping to have that done by the launch of Backdrop 1.6. So hopefully we'll have a new homepage on January 15th. But if we end up having a bunch of stuff that Wes needs to work on between now and then on Backdrop 1.6 itself, the new homepage will go out after the new product. We're also excited to start working on our forum, which is something that we have needed for a long time. It's been requested for a long time, and we have a bunch of code that's kind of ready for review. It's going to need a design kind of review to make sure that the new stuff looks good on our current site, looks good on the new site after the new launch too. And then we're probably going to need some user experience just to say, like, is this what people want? What are features that you want that aren't there? Are they possible for us to add quickly and easily, or are they going to be really hard? And then try and figure out if we can get people actually talking on the forum, what it is they need. All right, that's backdropcms.org. We are also working on Backdrop CMS, the project itself. It looks like the next scheduled bug fix release is 1.5.3, and we don't have any issues that are slated for that release. Although I think the layouts full bleed issue has been marked RTBC. So maybe that can go into the bug fix release.
Yeah, sorry, that link in the agenda is incorrect. That was pointing to 1.5.1 for some reason. I just fixed it. There's actually a number of things that are slated for 1.5.3 or attempting. There's actually more than one page at least.
Okay.
Yeah, about one page of issues.
And then the only other important bug fix release is the installer being apparently broken right now for other languages. I don't know if there's any update on that one.
I think that's, it's been a little while since I looked at it. But I think the pull request is actually functional and everything. And I had been saying that we needed more tests, but I actually realized that we couldn't test it because the installer doesn't cover, or the testing suite doesn't cover installation, like install.php. Yeah, there's a pull request that Doc Wilmot has made that is in and needs review. Yeah. Anyway, it needs review. It looks like. I mean, it's actually a really simple fix. It looks like.
All right. Maybe you want to take over the 1.6 list?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so 1.6 comes out January 15th. We have a feature freeze January 1st, which means we have 3 weeks basically, plus tomorrow, to kind of wrap up what we're going to be doing for 1.6, which wrap up might not be the right word. We've got a lot of work to do. I think the 1.x branch is still not a whole lot different than the 1.5x branch at this point, but there is a lot of work that's currently in progress. First of which is the reference module, and the reference module didn't make it into the last release, and we're hoping to make it into 1.6. Its main issue is 13.01, but the primary place where development is happening is in github.com/backdrop-contrib/reference, a contrib project instead. There has been some work Jeff has done to make some initial testing things for reference module, which is fantastic. Thank you, Jeff. It's not yet merged into the project, but could need some review. Jeff, are you hoping, I imagine, for a review from me on that, or Mike, maybe you could take a look at it as well?
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. I didn't see that pull request, so I will look at it.
Okay, excellent. So that's awesome to see that coming along. Functionality-wise, it seems like it's been put together. We're still pending the upgrade path. Jen, I think, has volunteered to try to do something regarding term reference module upgrading. Have you had any progress on that, Jen?
I'm going to start on the 15th.
Okay. It's very bold of you.
We'll see. It could be really impossible, but
yeah. Again, if we want to move term reference to reference, we're going to need entirely new widgets and stuff like that, just because it works different. So,
right.
Yeah, I just think that we need to look at the complexity, because I think like the complexity of adding all of those features to the reference module might be more complex than just keeping it as two separate modules. So we should
It's not modules now. It's part of taxonomy module, so we can't keep it separate that way. And I think like this is another thing about Backdrop's principle, saying that pushing this burden onto contrib is against what we believe in. Like saying, sorry, you're going to have to write support for both term reference and entity reference for every contrib feature. So we just need to like actually have something to measure in terms of what we're adding versus what we're doing to the rest of people using Backdrop. And so I think like I want to spend some time looking at what that actually feels like to write that upgrade path, because I think it's going to be significantly better for users if we can do it. And I'm worried that if we can't do it when reference goes in, we won't be able to do it at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Jen, but I also, you know, we're in conflict here with how much compatibility can actually be maintained.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike, you want to add something?
No, sorry. I'm definitely fine with taking a look at it. So if we want to look at it further, we can definitely do that. No problems with that.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do that too, because I feel like I'm the champion for wanting that upgrade path. So I feel like I need to be the one to look at it and see how hard it's going to be to convince myself that it's okay, if nothing else.
Yeah. Okay. It's good to see that moving along nonetheless. So yay. good to see progress there. Entity view modes is issue 315. This allows you to add custom view modes, like out of the box, there's like a teaser view mode and a search result view mode and things like that. And this allows you to create customized view modes for each type of entity when managing the view modes for teaser, and like managing how the fields are displayed for each one of those view modes. This one actually is looking really pretty good. It functionally works, but I think there's been a lot of back and forth around the UX of how these pages are displayed, how we deal with where the link goes for add a new view mode, terminology around view mode versus display mode. Lots of conversations happening there in that 315 issue. I'd like to get my own personal review on this as well. I've been looking at it, and even though it works, we have to figure out some consistency issues there. There's also been a lot of suggestions around ways we can handle this better, but those better ways are introducing new UX patterns that we don't use real frequently or possibly at all in some places. So anyway, lots of great discussion there. Yeah, I think it would be best if we can be consistent with the patterns we have right now, because that is also, being consistent is also the easiest thing to do, because if we're not introducing anything new, then we already have all of the tools in place to use the existing patterns. I don't have too much more to say on that one. It's great that it's working. I will say that, but I think I'll save any additional feedback for just writing it up in that issue. Jen, anything else on that one? I know you've been doing some work on it.
On entity view modes?
Uh-huh.
I think it looks pretty good. There's a couple of major downsides that we ran into when working on it, where we have this sort of loose rule that we're not putting the word entity or bundle anywhere in the user interface, but that's really hard to do when you're trying to find view modes for entities and bundles. So I just left the terminology the same as it was for the most part on the Kinship version. And I think that it's a little tricky. I would love to get more review on that. I did kind of a UX pass on the module and reworked the landing page that it's in a table with drop buttons like the rest of our UIs, rather than like field sets with edit links, which is what it was in Contrib. I also wrote, I made some changes to the form. I think it was based on Mike's suggestion, where we should be able to select the entity type, and then it does like an AJAX reload and shows you the bundle type selection, so you don't have to have a specific add path for each entity. So it's a little different. I think it's better, but I would love to get more people's opinion on whether it's actually better or if it's just different. And yeah, I think it's looking great in terms of the functionality. It works, it does what it's supposed to. We just need to find a way to make the user interface make sense to people. I mean, that's already kind of a weird concept where it's like Field UI has different tabs for different displays. Like, how do you have a sensible way to like add more tabs? So yeah, more feedback, definitely welcome on that.
Cool. Okay, the next two issues are both related to managing blocks in layouts. That it can be a real hassle if you have the same block in 10 different layouts that all has the same configuration, that if you update one setting in that block, you need to update that setting in all 10 of the blocks and all 10 of the layouts. And so there's two approaches that have been undertaken to solve this problem, one of which allows you to copy the settings of an individual block, and the other one allows you to copy a collection of blocks that are all in one region and basically replace that region in another layout. From an implementation perspective, the block copy one is a lot simpler and works in a way that I think people would more likely expect. That's issue 2245. But there's also a region copy block that's in 1886. Both of these pull requests, although they work, really kind of bring up some concerns for me that we basically are creating interdependencies from one layout to another layout, and actually finding like which layout provides like the master block can be a little bit tricky. There's also a little, I posted some feedback in there about the way that the drop down for the list of blocks is created. It's a little bit overwhelming, showing every layout and every block and every layout all in one giant drop down select list. So there's some good ideas in here. The implementation is really pretty simple for both of them. But I'm worried about the long-term repercussions of what we could be getting ourselves into making these dependencies in between layouts. Just from a actual site management perspective, it seems like it could be convenient, but also really difficult to keep organized if we're just referencing blocks in between arbitrary layouts. Could make for a site management headache, in my opinion. Some more feedback would be appreciated on those. I'm not sure if the current approaches are ones that we want to stick with, but that's why we need additional feedback on those. Because I'd love it if other people weighed in as to whether or not they felt even the current approach would be something that they would use on a regular basis. Okay. Next issue for 1.6 is the media/file entity solution, which is issue 2375. It looks like okay. This issue that I just mentioned, 2375, is not the entire meta issue, which is at 1448. It's a sub issue that looks like Jenna's been working on that is really just about providing a listing of files and an interface to bulk manage them so that you could find a file in your entire system and then delete it or replace it with a different file or something like that. This issue, 2375, that adds that basic listing, Doc Willman and I both have looked at it, but it looks like there's a problem with the pull request that the actual view itself is missing.
What?
So, yeah, there's no config file in the pull request.
Well,
Yeah.
that's not useful.
Yeah, I think you may have forgot.
I tried reviewing it, but then I'm like, there's no view here.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Sorry, everyone.
Oops, that's okay. It's nice that at least some progress is being made there. So we'll give that another review once the view itself is actually in place, because right now there isn't one.
I did add bulk operations, at least.
Yeah, I saw that in the pull request. Yeah, there are bulk operations, even though there's no place to use them, of course. Jen, is there already a menu callback for actually editing a file
There's
entity itself?
There's not. So the only bulk operation I added in that initial pull request is just to delete, because that's the bug that needs to get fixed.
Mm-hmm.
But we can also add menu callbacks for editing files individually. That's part of file entity module, and it should be pretty easy to copy over.
Yeah, if I recall in file entity module, delete is the only bulk operation there is in file entity module.
Well, you can't edit in bulk.
You can edit?
You can't edit.
Oh, can't. Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah,
so
but
even
there's no edit at all. Like, there's no edit.
Well, there's nothing to edit right now, unless we make the file fieldable. There's nothing that is in there that can actually be edited, right?
Well, in file entity, you can edit the file and replace it. Like, it gives you an upload.
Oh.
And you can replace the file with another one. So your file ID stays the same, but the document that's attached can be modified. So we could do that part.
Yeah, which actually sometimes is actually kind of useful.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the WordPress workflow or MailChimp, right? Where you're like, replace this file. Like, people, I think, are accustomed to that workflow. So wouldn't be unreasonable to add it, although it would be much better for have other stuff editable too.
Frankly, just having the view to start off with is a big improvement.
Yeah,
Right.
and the delete option, so we fix our bug, and then the rest
Yeah.
we can later.
And I saw you did have the problem with the not being able to put the usage in. Has anyone had a chance to look at why that's happening?
I looked into it a little bit, so just for you guys that aren't aware, I wanted to put the file usage count on there so you could see like if one file was referenced in multiple places that it was used in multiple places. But as soon as you added join to file usage from file managed, all of the rows duplicate. So I think it might just be a problem with the views integration.
Did you try clicking that thing in views that says reduce duplicates?
I tried the reduce duplicates checkbox, and then there's like a seriously reduced duplicates checkbox as well.
Okay.
But it didn't seem to do anything. I'll try again after I put the view back and see where we're at. I also just wanted to look at how Drupal 7's views integration worked and make sure that we have it the same. I think there might have been changes to that since our file managed thing went in. So
Yeah, once that gets back up, I'd like to take a look at that as well. I think if you haven't tried it, the turning on the aggregate rows option made also under query options is probably also what we want, because that enables doing stuff like count queries and sum queries and things like that. And I think that's what we need, because the same file can be used in multiple different places and multiple times within those places.
yeah, I mean, I think if we're going to offer a field that's count usage, it should work. If we're going to require people to aggregate, we should remove the field that doesn't work in order for them to do it until they, I don't know. It seems like.
No, I'm actually saying that the data structure itself does cause duplicates because that's the way it's stored in the database. Like actually doing a query, if you were to write this out, that join, and then it requires doing a sum query in order to add together the multiple rows together to actually determine the total number of usages.
Anyway, I think both Nate and I have to look at it if you add the view so we can actually see the view.
Yes. First thing first.
Let's move on. Okay, anyway, that's awesome. I think if the broader issue for file management goes a little bit beyond that, like actually being able to manage a file directly, like we talked about with page callback, and then eventually integrating that with the rich text editor. But one thing at a time. If we can get the view in place, that would be great for 1.6, and we can continue working on this as releases roll out. Okay, the next item that we've got is 796, which is add page title and tabs and action links as blocks instead of being directly in layouts. Did this get added to the agenda just this week? I feel like it's wasn't in here last time I was in a meeting.
It was here last week. It might not. I don't know if you were here last week.
Okay. No, I was. So, yeah, this isn't even tagged for this milestone yet. This has been a long-standing issue. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it was here, and we were talking about, last week we were talking about removing things from the list that weren't possible to get done by 1.6. And so that's why this one says it's possible, because it's going to be really hard to get it to work, but it's not actually, it's not impossible. So I would say,
which issue is this again?
796 is the number.
So this is for adding the blocks for elements that are currently hard-coded in layouts, and then making layouts smart enough to know whether the blocks are.
Yes, this one. I like this one.
Yeah,
it's a good issue, but it's ambitious. Undertaking it would be ambitious. I would believe so, because it's an API change. It literally will make it so that layouts will function in a different way than they did previously.
Well, I think, didn't we decide that, like the page title, all we're doing is adding a conditional statement in there, so the page title display just like it currently does, unless you add a specific page title block.
Yeah.
So basically, it should be backwards compatible perfectly fine. Until you add a page title block, it still displays the page title where it is. So we're not breaking the API or the functionality. We might want to remove that conditional statement then and 2x a backdrop, because then we can just assume that people will use the block. But for the time being, it should be fine.
Right. We'd also need to update the default installation profile, and possibly what if you didn't want a page title at all? What would be the mechanism to remove it?
There's a checkbox for page title in your layouts display whether you want it to show or not. That's already a self problem.
Yeah, what she said.
I think there are a lot of intricacies that we have to look into when we're working at it, because it is intended to work the way it works now and not the way we want it to work. But I think at the very least, we can, in theory, we can add the blocks. I'm not sure the ramifications of what will happen after that. So that's why it's maybe we can get it done for 1.6, because if we try it and we're oh my God, everything is horribly broken, we should push to 1.7. But I think it's possible to do in the 1.x cycle. We just need to do it carefully. We might not have time for the careful part.
In any case, this issue itself, I think it's a great idea, but it has been updated in almost since March, quite a while.
Really?
Oh. Yeah. So it's not like there's actually any progress on this or pull request or anything. It just was brought up recently, and I guess put into the agenda. So anyway, ambitious for 1.6. Yeah, but yeah, it is a great idea.
What day is it? Okay, so next week is the 15th, which is 2 weeks before feature freeze.
Yeah, we should focus on the ones that are already started.
All right, so let's push that to 1.7 now.
Okay.
If
I'm not sure we have a tag for 1.7.
happens, we can make one. It is tagged with 1.6. If
I tagged it 2 minutes ago.
Okay, if someone happens to work on that and it gets a ton of attention between now and the 1st, we can review it. But I think that all the issues that already have progress on it should get attention first.
Yeah, exactly.
I might take a look at this, just because this is one of those things that drives me crazy about the current layout. So, but we'll see if I can do anything by the 15th with it.
Okay. All right. The next item that we have on the list here is add a system of pageless nodes, which is issue 100, a very long-standing issue. I'm not really a fan of talking about this one because there hasn't been any progress. Jen, do you want to take the talk on this one?
Sure. We want to be able to create content that does not have a path, things like slideshow slides or items that will only appear in any kind of view, like a list of commissioners or whatever. There's lots of different ways that Drupal solved this problem. It would be fantastic if we could make a decision about which one we want to pursue for Backdrop and move towards putting it in core. We haven't been able to make the decision. We have sort of an idea of which path is easiest, but we're not entirely sure it's easiest. So we need to write some code and figure out how that's going to look for us. I'm also feeling like there's no way we can have this done by the 1.6 milestone, but it is kind of a priority. Everybody wants it, so that's why it's on the list.
I think the last thing I did in that issue was ask the question of hey, what would the base table look like for these things? Is the base table anything different than the current nodes? I guess we had the answer of the comments and stuff would not be there, but
yeah, the last time we left this was that I think that we were saying let's try putting Rabbit Hole in core and see what that looks like.
Okay. Oh, then there was the other issue that I think that the entity API makes the assumption that all entities have paths. So,
right.
So I think that was the thing that we had to look at next, was hey, can we even create an entity that doesn't have a path? Because I think the system actually, that's kind of baked into the entity API, which we can't really change.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, makes things difficult.
I mean, we could definitely remove the path aliases for them, but I think they still need paths to actually view. And whether, I mean, theoretically, we could see if we can make a change to the entity API so it doesn't need a view thing or automatically redirects to the edit or something like that. But I'm not sure if we can do that without making things complicated.
Yeah.
I would say bump this just because I think we have enough on our plates with other stuff, and we have some fundamental questions. So if someone wants to look at the fundamental questions, then we can reconsider it. But until we actually do that, we can't move forwards.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, totally. Let's bump that one again. I know. Sorry, Jeff. It was a completely reasonable thing to ask at the beginning of the release cycle. Okay, next item on the list is breadcrumbs and menus cleanup. This is actually a different issue than was in the agenda last week. It's 2156 is the issue. And this is a suggestion by Gregory to correct the way that we handle breadcrumbs, menu title, or the title in the header of the page, as well as the title in the H1 tag. So the HTML head title, the page title, the breadcrumb, and the tabs. Basically, reworking the way the menu system displays those things to be consistent across the board. Right now, we've been solving this issue primarily by using like backdrop set title in various places to make the menu make sense, or make sense in a way that we think is better than what is there by default. And potentially this would change the way the menu system itself functions to provide like a consistent structure all the time for us. It also has a kind of simple suggestion that we just change what's in the HTML page title to include, if you have tabs present, the name of the parent menu item and then the name of the tab, both in the HTML head title, which seems like that would be a smart move to do.
But that would appear above the tabs, though.
I don't know. I'm talking about what's actually in like the top, what's in the browser window.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like what's you're seeing on the page is usually, the parent and then the tab, but in the title itself, you typically end up with just the word like appearance, even though you're under like, install themes, for example.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. So some really good ideas in that issue.
I'll probably have some time. In theory, I'm on holiday. I might have some time. I just give it a couple of weeks, and if not, then we'll push it. Maybe a week. So I'll see if we put something, the simple stuff, at least that don't mess way too much with the menu routing system, whatever.
Yeah, it's got some really good ideas in there. There hasn't been any implementation at this point, but some good ideas, and they might not be difficult to implement. So definitely worth taking a look at. That's issue 2156.
Yeah, that's a good issue. There's actually quite a few related issues, but yes, let's sort one, or let's pick the easiest and just move on from there.
Yeah. Okay, and finally, the last issue that we have in this listing is improving the rich text editor, an ongoing meta issue at issue 1087. The items that can be implemented in there is basically pick and choose any individual one. I saw Jen looking at spell checker again today, but I haven't actually tracked which, if any of these, has been making progress for 1.6.
I don't think there's been any progress on any of them, but I just had an issue today on one of my Drupal 7 sites with the spell check, and so I was checking to see what we did in Backdrop. I thought we had an issue to enable browsers built-in spell check, but I couldn't find that anywhere. Did that get committed with the update to CK Editor that went in? Was it in 1.4?
No, the spell check still doesn't work. It's issue 2071, it looks like. But this suggestion is actually add the CK Editor spell check plugin. But I really think the easiest thing to do would just be to like enable the browser-based spell check.
Right. I thought there was an issue with that.
What's keeping the browser-based spell check from working? Like
there's an attribute on the actual element itself that says don't spell check.
Spell check equals false.
Yeah. Yes, that is it. Seriously. Yep.
So anyway, I can't find the other issue for enabling the browser-based spell check. I think we should turn that on.
I think we should hijack that existing issue for
does that create problems because it tries to does it try to spell check the underlying code with like HTML in it?
No, it's totally fine. It spell checks correctly. The reason that you might want the spell check plugin, this is what I'm running to on my other site, is that depending on people's operating systems and browser settings, they might have turned off spell check and don't know how to turn it back on. Whereas if you have a button in the editor, you can push the editor and it'll always spell check the code in the editor. So particularly, like, there's some really crazy issues with Chrome on Mac about built-in spell checking. So it's just a lot easier for people to push the button and figure out how to use their own software. So that's the reason people might want the spell check plugin. But I think that disabling the built-in spell check is weird and we should turn it on. And then for people who want the spell check plugin, there could be a contrib module that would add it. But at least we could help all the people who don't have the problems that exist in the world for.
And it seems like it seems like the spell check functionality for the editor could then disable, like if you click spell check in the editor, that could disable the browser spell check then, right?
Right. Yep. Totally. Yeah. So it's really dumb right now. It's all just turned off and really just enabling the OS level one until, if ever, we have the plugin based one. This seems like a no-brainer.
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to work on that issue. I don't know about anything else that people are worried about with CK Editor, but this one's a good start. Probably the only one we get.
There are more issues for 1.6 besides those listed here. You can find the full list under the 1.6 milestone. Some big, some small.
That's scary if we have more big ones because we already have so many.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of them aren't really really exciting features, but yeah, like some of them, like a really big one, like replace color module, for example. Wes isn't here, but that had been a thing for him while working on Basis, but I think that has slipped in, priority from other stuff, which is fine. There's a reason why we try to focus our efforts in those other items. Are all just kind of great to have, but not at all expected. Okay, that's it for the 1.6 release. So we've got a lot of work to do and 3 weeks to do it in. It is great to see that there's been a lot of progress on a lot of issues, and there's more progress in issues that haven't been mentioned directly in this meeting that are also rather exciting. So that's it for the 1.6 update and where we are. We've only got 10 minutes before the end of the meeting, but that's more than enough time to do the community growth section. Take it away, Gregory.
Thanks. So this is I think accumulated changes from 3 weeks or 2 weeks at least, because we haven't done the community growth for the last couple meets. So we have 7,651 downloads. That's plus 431 since last time we did the community stats. We have 342 total projects on Backdrop for Backdrop CMS. That's plus 12. We have 387 user accounts on backdropcms.org. That's plus 16. since last time, and then 51 total backdrop contrib authors, which is +1, and a big welcome to Alex Fingram. So that's it.
Yay, awesome. Thank you.
I have a question about contrib. I wrote a Drush download backdrop extension, which we can't put in the backdrop Drush extension because you can't bootstrap backdrop when backdrop's not there. Should I put that in contrib or as like tooling? I don't know. I think it could be valuable for people.
Can't you just make it be? Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So you can just install it as a Drush extension, and it works. But I just don't know where it should live. I'm thinking contrib.
It should be fine in contrib.
Yeah, finding contrib. I think it may be possible to put it in our existing Drush extension, because our existing Drush extension, it does include a bootstrap class, yes, but right now it basically doesn't do any like command rewriting unless the bootstrap class is used, but it actually contains commands itself, I believe.
So we can't override the drush DL command, but we can DLB or something.
Yeah, BDL or something like that.
No, download backdrop, BLD.
Okay, I was saying backdrop download. Yeah, you get it.
Let's argue about the order of the letters.
I think that we should even be, because it's just our Drush extension is an extension like any other. I think that we can add new commands. We just can't hijack them unless the bootstrap class is present.
I'll check.
Okay.
I'll put it in there and see if it works in there. I think I had it in there and it didn't work because it's like you don't have backup.
Yeah, our own checking might be preventing it. Yeah.
Well, that would be interesting, because if that's the case, then maybe that's why the Drush commands don't work on Drupal, and they tell us that backdrop isn't present. Like if we have something that's doing some checking when it shouldn't be doing some checking, that might be causing those other problems too.
Right, but I think it's all in our extension. All of the this doesn't work with this or does work with this is mostly all in our extension.
Yeah, this might help us figure out what it is in our extension, because we've got a bunch of stuff we don't know why it's not working. So.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see, upcoming events. We have a calendar at backdropcms.org/events. There's also an iCal feed you can pull out of the agenda. And I think it's also there on that /events page. I don't think that we have any that are being called out in this meeting currently, so that's it. Now we go into a general discussion, Q&A. Anything else that we would like to bring up to talk about right now, or something that we can talk about next week and we can put it on the agenda?
We need a blog post, if anyone wants to write a blog post.
Well, okay. I added a message to the PMC actually to take a look at the Drupal issue for the configuration storage thing, and this is definitely not something I think that we should tackle this release, but we might want to consider looking at for next release and beyond. And I'm not sure if you've seen the latest, Nate. I know you commented earlier in the thread, and you did a lot of work on looking at the pull request for doing the configuration management and database. The thread has included a lot of discussion like, oh, this is an edge case and stuff like that. But I was actually thinking that, after using both Backdrop and D8, it makes a lot more sense to keep the active configuration in the database. And so I was actually suggesting that we take a look at maybe actually changing the default the default configuration storage to use the database instead of the files.
Yeah, I go both ways on that one. I do think might be a good idea for us to do one thing at a time, possibly, and add it as an option.
Yeah.
And then, because I think we actually could add it as an option this release, because the code is quite functional at this point.
Okay.
And then decide on switching the default at some point.
I still think we need more feedback from more people, because this is the kind of thing that benefits very few of our existing users. And so we have specific principles that say that we're not adding stuff like this into core. And so we need to look at why we're making an exception to that rule in this case. And I think it would also be really good for us to document this process of this decision if we do have something that's going to violate our principles, so that we know in the future we can use it as a reference point and say, hey, these are the reasons we decided to go against our principles because it made sense for these others.
I don't think we're going against our original. I'm not saying this is something that's only useful for things. I'm saying that the vast majority of sites would be better served by storing the configuration in the database. I'm not really worried about the edge cases and people who want to do it in one or the other. I'm saying by default, having the configuration in the database is a fuckload easier than having a separate configuration location. I mean,
but
I have trouble.
Easier for you, not easier for our target audience.
Well, no, I mean,
yeah.
I think it's just something we need to be really careful about. Like, I understand the argument for it, and I think the code actually is really good. I just think we need to be careful in, like, how do we make these decisions?
Well, I don't think the target audience would be. I don't see how they benefit from storing the configuration in files as opposed to the database.
It's stated in the issue several times if you want to read it, but having a place that people can see, like when I save this file, this is the value, like there's an understanding of, like, this configuration gets saved into this file that's, like, very transparent and easy for people to understand. Whereas, like, saving it and putting it in the database, it doesn't look any different from the outside from how Drupal saved stuff and put it in the database. How Drupal set it.
Okay, so but then, like, you know, I feel like that, like, having we don't want people going into the configuration and making changes manually. Like, you should never really be doing that. Like, I know we keep showing it in our like, you know, when we give presentations, like, oh, we just changed the page title and the configuration file, but, like, really, like, people should never ever be touching those. Like, if they want to change their configuration, they could just change it to the sync directory or the import directory and then import the changes.
But like, just because you make something harder to do doesn't mean people aren't going to do it. It just means they're not going to understand it.
Anyway,
you could also make the case, though, that
hey, Gregory,
like,
Greg, I think your thing is on and fuzzy. Could you mute yourself?
Great.
I think that there's a good situation here where it's like, okay, for a beginner developer, it's really easy to see the files changes in the file system. Like, that's great for a beginning developer. But if you go one tier lower than that, which is potential users or site builders that don't even understand anything about the architecture or where anything is stored, that having it be seamlessly part of the database in an invisible location could actually be considered easier yet. And that's the way a system like WordPress functions, in that there's the database and that's it. And so when it comes to moving your site around, you move the database, and that's a much easier thing to deal with than making sure that your database and your config directory are always tied together, because they're very much dependent on each other.
But you don't want them tied together. Like, it's really important to be able to downsync your content only.
Right, but even the actual concept of downloading your configuration only, or any kind of configuration management at all, is actually a higher concept than many end users would even understand in the first place. Like, for an end user, the problem of configuration and content being separated from each other, being important, probably doesn't even register as a problem in their minds.
Right. Like,
their
WordPress
website is just their
website.
website.
Move the whole website back and forth. There's no issue.
Right, exactly. And so I don't think that, like, if we're talking about what our principles are and whether this violates them or not, if you go all the way down to the very lowest tier, the actual concept of configuration management itself is really, really high thinking for them. That it's already, like, even the actual concept of configuration management is pushing the threshold of what is acceptable in the project. And so moving or formulating an argument basically saying that this way of configuration management is easier than another way is maybe missing the point that configuration management itself, even the entire concept, is really pushing like the boundaries of what is necessary or appropriate for our audience.
I think that that's true, but I also think that making the concept of configuration management harder for those people to understand is a big deal. And like saying, okay, this is something you're never going to need to understand is fine. But then when you say, oh, actually, there's this tool we built for you and you aren't going to understand it, is different than saying, there's this tool we built for you and here it's really straightforward. You can see how it works. I don't know. I feel both ways on this issue. I feel like I looked at the code. It looks clean. It looks good. I wish we didn't have to force this on all of our users, especially existing sites. So if we can figure out a way to like introduce it as a setting first, and then maybe in Backdrop 2, we have like a way to get into it, but I wouldn't want to like make all of the sites that people already understand, think they understand, change the way they work.
No.
Right.
We're not.
There's no talk of doing that at all. Yeah. This is like an alternative storage mechanism in the same way that the cache storage mechanism is optional. Like
right.
you can use Memcache or you can use the database.
Apparently that's not acceptable. Like there are contrib modules that do alternate cache storage, which is why I asked if we could have a contrib module that would do an alternate database storage, and apparently it's not possible. So it's not like cache.
Yeah, and I am suggesting to make it the new default. I'm not suggesting to like go back and change how people's current sites work. But if we have it as a new default way, is to store it in the database. The other thing that I would look at is hosting. I would say we should really define, like, we should see how our users are currently hosting their sites and how we'd like to see them hosting their sites. I think that having configuration files where people can FTP up to their site and look around is one thing, but and that sort of makes things like easier and you could show them, but if they're using something like Pantheon, like they don't really have access to see the configuration files anyway directly on the live site or see changes happen or else like that. And there's no way for them to, use version control without importing and stuff. So, I mean, it's like, I feel like
also important too. Like if our target audience are WordPress users and WordPress users don't use Git, then providing a tool that allows them to manage their configuration changes in Git is sort of silly. So thinking about that, like what are people actually doing with Backdrop in the wild would be good to measure.
Yeah, I feel like we should sort of document like the different possible hosting solutions that people could be using, and then try to figure out who's using which ones and which ones are better for which.
Is there any way we can track that in our update status reporting? Like
not currently. I mean, there's an outstanding issue to track all sorts of things, but we can't track anything except which.
It's possible that we could track.
Sure. We can track anything we want.
Well,
but like, we have access to like hosting provider data.
Yeah, how would you tell what the hosting provider is? Yeah.
Oh yeah, that could be a little more difficult.
Yeah.
and serious like privacy concerns around that, because that's not asking about how the site is configured. It's actually asking about like how it's hosted. Like it's beyond just the knowledge of our site itself.
I think let's brainstorm in that issue. What it is like, we could definitely track the location of the config directory.
Yeah.
That might be enough.
Anyway, I think we should just like, I'm not suggesting we do anything for this release. Like, even though the code's mostly there, we can just keep it as a patch or something like that for now. But I'd just like to look at the issue, and I'd kind of like to not have like, oh my God, it's violating our principle discussions, and because
well, I think that's the only discussion we need to have. Like the pull request looks good. It's like ready to go. And the reason I pushed it away from 6 is because it's like we need to look at an edge case feature request and figure out what makes us decide either this is not an edge case or we don't care, we need to do it anyway. And those are the things that we are going to need to use in the future to make similar decisions. So this is the first issue we've ever had like this, which is why I think we just need to do it more carefully.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it's not really a technical issue right now because we can get it to work, but I just wanted to, just sort of think about where we're going with the configuration management and what makes it easier for the users. Yeah, and in the meantime, while we have I think there's an issue for it, and I don't think it's been addressed, but the installer freaking out if you've installed the site once and just killed the database and go to reinstall, it does all sorts of complaining about the configuration files being there from the old site without overriding them. And if you delete the configuration directories, then it complains that the configuration directories aren't there. So
it only does that if you have your server permissions set up a specific way. Like we did a bunch of work on the error messages to make sure that it used to explode, and now it just tells you what's wrong.
Oh, okay.
So if you have a writable files directory or config directory, it shouldn't complain. It should just write them for you.
Okay. Okay. So maybe that was addressed since last time I looked at it. But I know I've had, that's one of been my major pain points of just trying to reinstall my site and not being able to get the configuration system working properly. Yeah, and I feel like that could really mess up some intermediate developers trying to do site building. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I add my it's not an opinion, or I haven't decided, I'm undecided on that as well, but as a site builder and a beginner coder, can I add my thoughts there?
Yeah, sure.
So
go ahead.
DMI was added. What was changed from D7 was added to Backdrop because we didn't want to stay behind from what D8 was offering. As a single site builder, CMI helps people track changes via JIT. It doesn't help a simple builder. But then that begs the question, why did we add it in the first place? Which sort of implies that it was a wrong move. On the other hand, as a beginner coder, it greatly helps me, as Jen said, to understand what changes happen when it's harder for me to go into the database to see it. So it's helpful, but I'm not sure whether CMI was intended for our target audience in the first place as a JIT developer thing. If it is a developer thing, and having in mind that our policy, we favor the simple user rather than the developer, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking. I was leaning towards, nah, don't touch it. We've added it there. But then the more I think about it, I'm thinking that yes, it's a useful tool, but Drupal 7, which is what we say we branched off, and what we say, what we try to convince people that we are the continuation of, did not have CMI. It was database. Just as thoughts. I'm not saying that I'm leaning towards one side or the other. Just thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's we've sort of landed on a solution that's different than both Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. So we sort of have a third way of doing it. So that's why one of the things I was suggesting is Drupal 8 configuration management actually seems to work as far as the workflow. So if we sort of copy that solution, that might make things a lot easier so we don't have to explain how our CMI implementation is different than that one.
I'm not sure that's super relevant for us too, because we're not going to have a lot of overlapping users between Backdrop and Drupal 8. I think we've got more overlap between Backdrop and Drupal 7 or Backdrop and WordPress long term.
Yep. Anyway, lots more discussion to be had.
Yeah, this is sort of a long-term discussion. So.
Yeah,
but we might want to. I feel like we need a better way to have this discussion. I feel like we're sort of lacking the tools, and that having this one big issue is sort of creating it just more and more things just pile onto it. So I'm not sure whether we should create like a document with like pros and cons for the different things or something.
I started putting pros and cons in the very bottom of the first issue, but the problem is like I went through the entire issue thread to do that, but every time someone adds a comment, there's going to be another one. But I would encourage, like, if you have another, like anyone who's adding a comment, if they have another pro or con to throw in that list at the top. And I think that'll help people that come to read the issue later.
Yeah.
But I agree, it's not necessarily the best place to have that conversation. But it is a conversation that needs to be had. So if anyone has any recommendations on how to do that, that'd be good too.
Okay.
Does anyone want to write an article on backdrop security for Drupal Watchdog?
Do we have more security?
They have a issue coming up that's specifically focused on security, and I thought it would be nice to write up like our commitment to release patches for every security release as opposed to just tarballs, and like all the stuff we discussed earlier this summer about trying to make security fixes easier on existing maintainers. But I don't have time to do it this month. Probably no one has time this month, but
I'd be interested in reading it since I don't know what that all would say. So if someone writes it, I'll read it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we're in a great position to actually be providing information at this point, because we have ideas, but we haven't actually implemented them yet. And so we don't actually know how well they would work. So telling people...
Well, I don't know, because last time when we were specifically talking about it, it turned out that you had already done all of the things that the guy was asking for. We just hadn't bothered to tell anyone. I don't know. I'll try, and I probably can't do it this month, but I'll tell them I'll do it next month. I'll write something up and then send it over to you, Nate, and make sure you are actually doing all the things that I think you're doing.
Yeah, that would be useful.
Before it gets published, we get to confirm. Okay.
If you want to put on the calendar, I threw in the chat there, Nerd Summit is March 18th and 19th, backdrop friendly event.
Okay. Did you add it to the website?
What's that?
Did you put it on the website?
I didn't catch it.
Could you add that to backdropcms.org?
I don't know how to do that. I'll poke around.
Node add event, I think.
Oh, I see. Okay.
If there's no, I don't know where the link is to it. It's probably on the events page itself. I'll put it on the Google Calendar.
Okay, well, let's wrap up. We're at an hour already, and we've got a lot of work to do. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, everybody, for watching via the YouTube channel. We'll see you guys all next week and in the issue queue.
See you guys later.
All right, bye-bye. There at the tail end of the Hangout, Google Hangouts was totally freaking out there.
Yeah.
It was like nobody could understand what other people were saying.
I noticed that too.
Turkey. I said goodbye, but then I waited for like 10 seconds and the Hangout kept going, and I was like,